So there's actually a website about econometric poetry, and this is my second entry. And this is I'll read this to you, since you may not, or you can read something. Too much of a good thing is the title of that other paper. Some wine writers express their dismay over high alcohol Cabernet. Burning coal, says Al Gore, not the high Parker score, is the cause of the rising Beaumet. Still, a 15% Chardonnay will be too hot to drink, most would say. Lower bricks on the vine, spinning tricks with the wine, or a lie on the label might pay. And I could stop there, and probably you wish I would, but there's more. So, we've got all these data. It's a lot of data. Over 16 years, we got actually about 130,000 observations, I think, but we threw away some. Took out the German Rieslings because they have a lot of residual sugar and they're probably different for that reason. So we've got 91,000 usable samples. So now we're looking at the same question as looking at international data. So they import wine from all over. And we observe various things about the chemistry, including the actual and stated alcohol content. And different countries have different legal tolerances. So the US law, if it's under 14%, you can go plus or minus 1.5%. That's a big tolerance.
You mean percentage points?
Yeah, exactly. So if it's 14, you can say as low as 12.5 or as high as 15.5. That's the range. So you can say whatever you like. If it's 14.1, you can only go plus or minus 1%, 1 percentage point. Canada has only 0.5% tolerance. So, and one of the stories might be that we haven't done the analysis to see what the differences in the liquor laws in the different countries might be. In the US, if your alcohol content is over 14%, you pay an additional 50 cents a gallon federal excise. Now, if you're making $2 chuck in the Central Valley, they wholesale that for about $2 a gallon. 50 cents a gallon tax is serious money. So if you're making that stuff, you're not going to be wanting to go over 14%, I would say. If you're making premium Napa Valley Cabernet that sells for $100 a bottle, you don't need about 50 cents a gallon. So but this tax, these kinds of policies may have some influence over winemakers wanting to change the alcohol content or change what the label says about it. But if you get caught lying about the alcohol avoiding tax, you'll eventually get into some serious trouble with the alcohol, tobacco and firearms. They gather them together for some reason. So this is describing the data. You're allowed to look at your version of this table. It's hard to see through, but this is to show you that we have a total of 91,000 observations, 25,000 in French wine, nearly 20,000 Italian. About 10% of the data are Australian wines imported into Canada. So we've got a range of countries, but most of the countries we only have a few thousand observations. We've got lots of data on these countries that dominate the world wine industry or the world wine trade. And so this table shows that we're looking at France at the top row, and the first entry says there was the average in 1992 was 12.5% alcohol, and it says that if you take the average of annual changes, it rose by 0.22% per year, to 0.22 percentage points per year. No. Percent. That's growth rate, percent. Thank you. Would have been higher if it had done that. Could be. Yeah. So the next one is so you can work out, you can measure growth rates two ways I know about. One way is to just measure the percentage change each year and take the average of that. And that's actually like taking the log of the final value and the log of the initial value, taking the difference and dividing by n. And so that really depends on inputs. Or you can just fit a trend line, fit the log of the number against time and get the coefficient. And that will miss the endpoints, and so that's subject to outlier effects and regression problems. So we report both these ways of measuring the same idea, and they're different. So the average of annual change is 0.22, and the trend growth rate was 0.46. And then in France, so we measure temperature, we've got our heat index, we measure that at one place for each of these countries, ideally a place close to where the wine is made, but not always, it's hard to get good data. And so in France, we had a little bit of a rise in temperature too over this period. And so the rest of this table got that for everybody. So we've split the world up into the old world wine producers in Europe and the rest of us. And you can see for the old world, we had a rise in alcohol percent, pretty much like France, and we had a rise in temperature, pretty much like France. So there's some story here that if temperature matters, it's contributing something to this. You have to find out how much. And these things are all statistically significant, highly significant things. We've got having so much data is helpful. And then in the New World, we started off with high alcohol content. So you can see one thing you see is that old world wines are lower alcohol, and we've had a faster trend in alcohol in the New World slightly, and not so much in temperature. These aren't weighted either. This is just a simple average, and so for the world as a whole. Okay. So we fit a regression with all those data just to regress alcohol content of wine against a constant, a time trend, the heat index, a dummy variable for white, and lots of different regressions in the paper, but this is one that's useful to look at. And then we have these dummies for countries. And so this is saying, temperature matters a little bit. Or rather, there's an upward trend. Temperature matters a little bit, but if you're going to add a 1% alcohol, you've got to have increase the temperature by 40 degrees Celsius, which is a lot. So it's a statistically significant effect, but it's not very profound. And the temperature didn't go up enough for that to really matter. So white wines are about 0.5% less alcohol than red. The default country here is France, which is at the low end. So the default category is French red. And so you see Argentina, so Australia has 0.5% more alcohol than France. Canada, less, it's cold there. And so on.
Can we explore that a bit, Julian? Obviously, there's the country effect could be teased out further. Hot countries, cold countries, although you do have a heat variable. But it's the New World producers that have got higher coefficients vis-a-vis hot old world outfits like Portugal and what else? Italy. Spain, particularly. Yeah.
Italy's hot.
Yes, but what's the coefficient for Italy? It's quite a low one.
It's negative.
Yeah, so I wonder whether there's also something to do with the process of winemaking rather than the viticulture that's involved here. Because New World winemaking is a more sophisticated or more slick processes than Old World. And in fact, they send their winemakers across to the Old World to show them how.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll just signpost that.
Yeah, and we pull it apart some more in various ways. One of the things I meant to say and didn't before, that in this table there's... we'll get to it. It's all right. So part of what's going on here with these country dummies is that this is a very constrained model. We're forcing it to go through. And that changes a little bit when the model we actually use is one where we've got country-specific trends. And if you let them have different trends, rather than forcing them all to have the same trend, it works better. And so they make a bit more sense. All of that stuff I'm not really interested in. I'm just trying to deal with that so I can say something about the heat index. And that's our best model, and it basically says that it's not climate. It's not, our measure of climate doesn't account for this substantial rise in alcohol content of wine around the world. That's a model with lots of variables in it. So that leads us to what I want to talk about. which is this false label. It's another table like the other one, except the entries here now, we're looking at same data, but now we're looking at what the actual alcohol percentage was, what was reported, and the difference. And the first column is for all wines from France. The first block is all wines from France. On the right-hand side, we have it sorted into red and white, but they're about the same for red and white anyway. And this says that for France, the average alcohol content was 13%, the average report was 12.9, and the difference was minus 0.1%, and you think that's not such a serious issue, but in fact, if you look at the whole thing, the average discrepancy for the old world was about that much, but in fact in our data set we have it's about 60% of the discrepancies are positive, they're understating the alcohol content, about 30% they're overstating it, and this is an average of positive and negative errors. So when it's a positive error, it's about 0.4%. They overstate by 0.4. So if you're making wine in Germany or somewhere it's cold, you're more likely, if the alcohol content is low, you're likely to lie up. If the alcohol content is high, you're likely to lie in a negative direction by about 0.5%. So these are substantial misstatements, averaging about 0.5%, depending which direction is positive or negative. And this is an average of those numbers that misleads because you think, well, that's negligible, but actually 0.5% is not negligible. And when we pull that all apart and look at things, it's as though what the old world guys wish they could say, they'd like to say that their red wine is 13% alcohol. They'd like to say their white wine is 12.5% alcohol. People in the new world would like to say their red wine's 13.5% and their white wine's 13. It's about, you add 0.5% for being in the new world, that's what people would, they're lying in the direction of saying these things, regardless of what the truth is. That's their tendency. And so